Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Back2Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. I hope everyone is doing well. And just to remind those of you, or for those of you who are joining us for the first time, here at Back2Basics, myself and Professor Elias talk about questions and issues facing business practitioners in the real world, what they face during their day-to-day activities. Today's episode 6 focuses on the art of delegation. We are continuing our discussion around delegation and what it entails in the business world. Welcome, George, to the podcast.
Thanks, Mo. So last time we had a really nice chat about delegation, and you brought up a number of aspects and types of delegation. And I think this podcast really, really should build on some of the expertise and wisdom you brought last time. But I think we should start off with, if you don't mind, Mo, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off and make this a little more personal. And last time we had mentioned that there was a time professionally that I was having a hard time delegating. And I thought it would be nice if we start off with that and look at, how that affected me and the team. And is that okay if we start with that?
Yeah.
Make it a little more personal?
No, absolutely. I remember, actually, I was the one that brought it up last time. I told you I'm going to remind you and hold you to it. I am very interested in hearing your experience, and I'm sure people listening would want to hear too and see how they can relate to it. So by all means, go ahead. When, where, what happened? Tell us.
Sure. So Mo, and you've known me for a long time, and I think that you could attest to the fact that, I generally gravitate towards leadership situations, and I generally do well in it. And you would think that somebody that's like that and has done that for a very long time would be very good at delegating. And in some ways, I think I am, but professionally, maybe about 10 years ago or so, I think I ran into a pattern where another thing about me, Mo, and you know this, I'm a very particular person, and I think, most people would consider me to be type A and very detail oriented.
No, really?
In that,
I know that more than anyone, but go ahead.
I know, really, but believe it or not, right? But in that, what happens is I have very high standards for the work that I want to get done, and I fell into a trap of, well, I can do that. I'm just going to do it. So every time it was something that I could do, I would do it instead of delegating. And as a result, I was overloading myself with lots of work. Just out of, I convinced myself, I actually convinced myself that at some point I'm so busy that I don't have time to delegate. I don't have time to show somebody and explain to somebody what to do. And it sounds counterintuitive, but underneath it was actually a trust issue, right?
That you didn't trust others to do it, or what do you mean?
Exactly, and to my standard. And I didn't, and I had a few times where, the person didn't do the task to my satisfaction and was late, and it took a long time to chase after them. And for that, I convinced myself I'm too busy to delegate. I might as well do it myself, and I'll be my way. So
George,
all the better.
Look, before you go on, and I want you to continue, but do you mind if I stop you in between to ask you a couple of questions so that we can relate what you're saying, or to clarify? And let me give you an example. Two things that came up to my mind up to now when you said, do you think, and I'm not saying that you are, but do you think that being a perfectionist has anything to do with that trust part, or it's not that at all? It's not that because I don't know you. I mean, I know you like to do things the right way and, give everything your best, But do you think one of the reasons that you wouldn't want to trust others is because that sense of being a perfectionist, or no?
I think it was a combination of perfectionist and feeling such ownership over the task that those tasks and how they're performed are a reflection on me that led me to say, I don't trust
Oh,
people
interesting.
to do it
Okay.
to my standard, my way, because that is a reflection on me.
I see. So do you think is it safe to say then, for example, if you are managing some people and you are reporting your activities to your boss, your concern was that since that to-do list, so to speak, that you're working on and your team needs to work on, if you delegate it to one of them and it comes back not done properly, so to speak, and you hand it over to your boss, it will be a reflection on you personally, right? That it's not done the right way. I see what you mean.
Yeah, and so there's this kind of balance of, I think that having that ownership over tasks is very healthy and essential for a leader. But then where it led to distrust is unhealthy. But I was
assuming, right? It's an assumption. Yeah. Go ahead.
It is, right?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And for somebody like me who's hardworking and doesn't mind hard work, you can get by, you can live that way for a while. But for me, I was actually assigned an extra task at work to lead a very, very large proposal. It was a multi-billion-dollar opportunity for us. And we literally had about 30 days to put the whole thing together. And I had to do that in addition to my other work. And being thrown into that situation forced me, broke me and said, no, you can't convince yourself that you don't have time to delegate. Now I have to form this team. We have to do it quickly. And it forced me to learn a lot of lessons about the delegation. And I really believe that if you follow some of these steps, and again, they're aligned very well to the conversation we had last time in episode 5. I really believe if people follow these steps and do them well, then they'll be better off in their business and have better delegation.
All right, and we'll definitely go through these, but but you know what you just shared, there's so many lessons learned coming out of it and so many questions we can ask. But the one other question that I wanted to ask you, and thank you for sharing that, by the way, when you said you were chasing your worker because I don't remember, you said if it wasn't done on time or that it wasn't done the right, or that it wasn't done properly. To link this to what we were talking about last week, George, was it that they didn't do it your way, or was it that the result was actually wrong?
It was a combination. They weren't doing it the way I wanted it to be done. It wasn't happening on schedule. It was taking too long, and so I was constantly finding them, and it was a big problem. And Mo, I'm not trying to blame that worker. In fact, I believe that when something's going wrong in your organization, in your business, you don't blame other people. That's your responsibility. That means something's wrong with your leadership. And I know a lot of folks probably feel offended by someone that says that. If something's wrong in your organization, it's your fault. But I think leaders that fail to take responsibility, they also fail to fix the biggest problem, which is likely leadership. So, and I think the perspective that I took to fix my issues in delegation had to do with stop blaming the people I'm delegating to and start blaming the delegator and be a better delegator.
I'm processing what you're saying. I agree with you. Yes. it can open up a whole other discussion to talk about the fact that if you have 10, 20 people reporting to you and something is not done right, when is it really your fault and when is it theirs? But as far as what we're talking about now, yes, I do agree with you. Now, how does this factor in, George? I think maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, when we were talking about management in general, we may have said, or it may just be in my mind, that if someone can do something 80% as well as you do, give it to them so that you free up your time to do something else that really does require your time, right? And think about it for a second, right? How does that, do you think, factor into our discussion when we're delegating? If someone can do something 80% as well as you can do it, you, right, in your team, think about that scenario that you talked about. Would you give it to them, or would you try to find someone else that can do it 100% or 90% as efficient and effective as you would? Does that make sense, the question? Do you get it?
Yeah, so it's hard to answer that because the answer is it depends. It depends on how critical
what it
is.
Yeah.
So if it's open heart surgery, I'm not suggesting that we find somebody that could do the 80% job, right? Yeah, there's a certain level of qualification and certification that has to happen, especially
but in
for
the
critical
business
tasks.
world, yeah.
Well, in the business world, there are, literally open heart surgeries. I mean, that is a business too, right? And there's businesses that can be, there's things that happen that can be safety critical. There's other issues, where you can't have somebody that's uncertified. But there's ways that you do training in safe spaces, and you make sure you train people up. So, I mean, the answer is it depends. But I think the point that you're driving to is that, for most tasks, perfection isn't always necessary, and getting something done versus not is more important, right? So you have to balance it and balance it for the team, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. You're right. But I know you have those 9, I think, steps, 8 or 9 steps that you had listed out. And we briefly talked about it before about effective delegation. First, did you finish your example? Did you have anything else you want to add on to it, or did you want to go into these now?
No, I think we can just kick off with the steps for effective delegation. And the first one that I want to point out is, you as the leader, you need to decide that you are delegating the task for positive and healthy reasons, which includes the health of you, the health of the team, the health of the assignee or individuals that are going to perform the task. And in that, you also need to decide that you, as the delegator, are taking ownership of the task and the results. Very important.
Yeah. So it's not like you're just handing it over to them and then, all right, now it's your responsibility. I'm out of it. I have nothing to do with it anymore. That it's still under your ownership. You're still the captain of that ship.
100%. And the reason why this is very essential is because the way you own the task and the way you delegate it from that point on, if it's for positive, good reasons, and you are taking ownership, the people that are around you and are being delegated to are going to understand that how important it is to you. If they don't see it as important, then why would they perform the task?
I get your point. I'm looking at it. I'm reading it again to see if there's anything I want to add to what you just said. Decide that you are delegating. Again, so that step 1 for effective delegation that we were talking about is to decide that you are delegating the task for positive, healthy reasons. You, the team, and the individuals involved, and that you decide that you're also still taking ownership, or better yet, to say you continue to take ownership of that task and the results that will come out of it, regardless of who you assign it to. It's still under you.
Yes, this is what puts you in the mindset of the delegator. Right? So much of business is making sure that you are in the right mindset.
That's what I do in business coaching. It's all about mindset. I agree with you 100%. Changing someone's mindset is way, way, way more difficult than changing how they do something that is tangible or measurable, something that's materialistic that you can see. So mindsets are 100%. I agree. They're the foundation, step one of anything that we do. Okay.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you going to say, George?
So no, it's okay. Step two, right? So step two, the next step is to match the task to the persons or persons and get them assigned or de-assigned. And what I mean by that is, if you're in a large organization, you may not be, especially if you're a project manager, you may not be the person that, I'll put my air quotes in. I know that you can't, see them on the podcast, but I'll put the air quotes in. You don't own that individual, or that person's not necessarily matrix and works for you. So you will often need, in this process of finding the right person, also work with their supervisor or their manager to get them assigned, and possibly de-assigned from some other task or some other work to provide them with the time to support you. So you need to do some research and understand this individual. This isn't just grab a body necessarily. I mean, it might, right? But you literally might just need somebody to sit there and watch the door or be a security guard, right? But in most cases, you need someone that's qualified to do the job.
Agreed. And this, to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, in my mind, this would also factor into what we talked about last week, as far as if you're going to give them full control, if you're going to have full control, or if they're going to have semi-control, depending upon, yes, first we said it in step one, that how critical the task is when we talked about the 80-20 rule. But step two, even if the task is not that critical, but the only person available for you to pick is not that experienced, so to speak, that may decide on how much control you want to give them, or how much you will micromanage the process or not. So it's the task and the person. Yep.
Yeah, totally. Then really the next step is, once they're assigned to you, once they're available to help or support this, you need to approach that person. And I say that it's always best to approach somebody with kindness, and the way you do that, I even like calling it humbly bold. We're not talking about not being a leader. So you want to have some boldness, some confidence, but also have that balance of humbleness, where that person can talk back to you and tell you where they're coming from, the issues. That sets the tone for the rest of the relationship on how you approach them. Oftentimes, I'll use phraseology like, let's say, Mo, I'm asking you to get an assignment for me. I might say, hey, Mo, I really need help with something. Yeah. I'm not saying, Mo, you do this, you do that. I'm not commanding or barking orders. Hey, Mo, I'm in a pinch. I need some help. You got time to help me? Hey, come over here. Let me show you what's going on, right? And that's kind of going into step 4. Yeah. But that approach really sets the tone for the rest of the job.
And you know what? Because I'm thinking about back in my early management days, I think this was one of the points that I used to struggle with, which I used to call it like the first encounter, the first point of contact. When I know who it is that I want, I talk to his or her boss that, all right, I need to borrow this person, or maybe they already work for me, right? Point is, once that person is defined and we already know what needs to be done, making that first contact where we're both kind of like gauging each other, or we're both kind of like assessing, measuring each other. I always found that third point, the humbly bold, balancing that where you're coming across as humble and not weak or desperate. It takes some finesse to relay what you need done in the right way without, I want to say, maybe losing advantage or losing that authoritative figure. And that was one of the things that I think I struggled with a lot in my career at the beginning, in my early career days, where when I made that contact with somebody that I didn't know, especially I didn't know, when we would sit and we had an urgent thing to work on, it takes some practice and experience to get to the point where you know how to handle that situation properly, where you're not coming across as a bully, and at the same time, you're not coming across as desperate. You're balancing it in a professional way to manage that relationship. I think it takes a lot of emotional intelligence to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a bit counterintuitive, where the stronger your language, or the stronger you try to make yourself appear, the weaker you actually are, and the weaker you're actually perceived, right? Yeah. Whereas if you approach somebody asking for help, or telling them that they're needed or wanted, or even better, it's not you that needs help, the entire team needs your help. The organization needs you to support us this way. It builds community, it builds responsibility, and it really provides that person with some power, and in the way that they feel about themselves performing that task.
Yes, because I think more in the managerial people relations, and a lot of managers do tend to do that when they feel like they're inexperienced or they have some insecurity. They tend to compensate for it by coming across as very aggressive, very authoritarian, very powerful, like the all-knowing, all-strong, all-powerful, all in control individual. And you're right, it backfires like crazy. I see this all the time. You see it from anywhere from a fast food restaurant to a billion-dollar company. When you look at the manager and you see them yelling, screaming, criticizing, it doesn't serve the purpose. The more you yell, it goes back to that saying we always say, the more you yell, the louder you are, the less the person in front of you will hear, right? It's distracting. So you're right. You have to be very careful how you approach and how you manage that situation.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. And I just want to say one more thing about this. This pattern, these 9 steps, these patterns, they mostly go in order. They don't have to be 100% in order, but this is a prescription, that the way you put it together. And even in the way you approach somebody, there's always something that breaks the rule, right? So let's just say in a situation that might be life or death, or somebody could get hurt, or if there's a safety issue, there's times to build up what I call your command presence, and unfortunately maybe get somebody's attention and bark an order. Hey, you, shut that switch off right now. Someone's gonna get killed. There's times that you need to be forceful and be a little less humble and more bold. But the whole point is to always balance it, right? Always balance it.
So kind of like going back to what we said last. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead from last week.
No, I was going to say, and that again links to what we said last week in one of the types of delegation, the one where you have full control under those urgent, emergency, need to get done yesterday situations. Yeah, you probably do need to be a little more commanding and less communicative about it, maybe, so to speak, or one of those like not open for discussion kind of situations, like you just said. Turn this off, get this done if it is a very critical, urgent matter. Agreed.
Absolutely. So step four is you need to sufficiently explain the task to the resources and the team members as appropriate, right? And what I mean by as appropriate, bring in everyone who's involved. Make sure everybody knows who's involved, what does success look like, where is the task, what's the budget, the schedule, and if like for someone like me who's particular, you may need to explain, and this is the how I want it to be done. Right now, that's again a place where it depends. If you're working with somebody that is an expert, a knowledge worker, and you don't want to get into a how that it becomes offensive, right? You run the risk of offending somebody if you explain it at too lower a level. They're like, okay, I got it. So, but other people need a little bit of a how. So, don't forget the how, but make sure it's balanced for the task and for who you're delegating to. It's one thing to explain to your surgeon how they're going to perform surgery, right? It's another thing to describe to a particular, somebody who's doing work at your house. I want this to be painted or done a certain way.
Yeah. No, you're right. And also to add on to that, the full picture, besides the how and what needs to be done, if that individual from step 3 that you pulled in now is going to be working as part of a bigger team, there's that whole introduction, where do you fit into the team phase, right? So we talked about the task, we covered the task, but now there's that people management part where he needs to belong to that team. So he needs to see how he fits into that new world that he's going to be operating in for a day or a year or whatever it may be, right? So that new environment also will take some involvement from the manager to, what's the word? Transition that individual into that team, into that world.
Absolutely. Then George, the next thing that's very important.
Yeah.
So really the next thing that's really important is to communicate what I like to describe as not just the why, but the chain of whys. Why you, why the team, why the organization. And you really need to get into, hey, the team has gotten it this far. You're coming in here. When you give us the results of your task, so and so is taking it, and they need to do this. So if you can explain the why and why it needs to be done, there's times where I've said to somebody literally, listen, you got to get it done by Thursday. That person that you're handing off the work to has Friday to get it done. If you give it to them late, they work the weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So you gotta explain to them the why the schedule, the why the budget, why, right? Then the next thing that I think is critically important, especially for complex tasks, is get those resources, that team, to confirm that they're ready, willing, and able, that they have ownership of this task, and get them to repeat back to you what they're about to do. If they can't say it in their own words and explain back to you, there's a good chance that they're going to miss it, right? Got it, right? In the military, they do it. They copy back the orders. Copy. I'm about to do this. I'm about to do this. Confirmed. Yes, go. Right. This is a way of communicating and ensuring somebody can mutually understand it. Okay. And I think we talked about this next step a lot. After they've communicated back what their intentions are, how they're going to do this task, you have to ensure that the monitoring of that task, the monitoring plan, is mutually understood. right? And what I mean by that is I'll often tell somebody, listen, something goes wrong, something's not as expected, don't wait till tomorrow to tell me immediately. This team needs to know if you run into trouble so we can jump in and help you, all right, or change something.
Yeah.
So we all know what,
Yeah.
we need to know what's happening, right? Oftentimes on very critical tasks, like I told you, the one that broke me where I had 30 days to do a $2 billion opportunity, there's daily stand-ups. Every day the team's talking out what everybody's issues are. We're about to do this, we're about to do that, I finished this, I finished that. It's not that they're accountable to me, they're accountable to the team. And in an environment like that where it's very team oriented, me being part of the team, the leader's part of the team, everybody's working together and nobody wants to give up. But you know what? Listen, if a team member's hurting, the rest of the team jumps in, right? That's the pattern, right?
Yeah.
And so that gets into supporting them, making sure everybody's appropriately communicating. You got to be hands-on sometimes, and that's fine. And the ninth one, this very last one that I want to bring up, Mo, is the post-task review. And I know a lot of people skip this. I see it as very important for a learning organization, right?
Yeah.
If a task is done, even if it's a basic task, if you don't give feedback, hey, great job. Did you have everything you needed to perform? Could this have been done better? You won't learn for the next time around, how things should be, right? And if it's a bigger task, maybe you have a big post-mortem. You bring everybody in and say, okay, all this got done. Let's talk it out. What went well? What didn't? What should we look at for next time? Right?
It's kind of like the really lessons learned phase. Yeah, the lesson learned.
Absolutely.
Lessons learned. And it's true, because good or bad, everything that happens, it shows the power of reflection when you sit and go over all the good things that happen, the bad things. Because once you reflect on it and you take the time to talk about it, it turns into experiences that you can learn from or be preventive in the future. No, good 9 points. And I'm glad we went through them. What I think we can do, for the sake of time, George, next time we can talk about maybe what are the warning signs, or what are the signs we can have for, what do you want to call it, toxic delegation, red flags that can come up. We can maybe talk about that in our next discussion.
I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah, so next time let's talk about bad delegation and what, literally what can't you delegate and why, and some of the problems that people encounter with delegation. And I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you've seen a lot as well.
Yeah. No, definitely. Let's do that. So we'll kind of maybe wrap up, do the third discussion of delegation and wrap it up, and then conclude it with that phase next week, and then move on to our next topic, which we will share and see where it leads us next time.
That sounds great.
Great. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Back to Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. I hope everyone listening did enjoy what we talked about and found it helpful, relevant to you and what you do. And as always, we welcome any feedback from you, anything you want to share with us, including suggestions for future topics. George?
Yep. Thank you, and see you next time on the Back to Basics podcast.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.